And in this panel discussion, we're going to connect the global picture that Scott provided with words from Wichita, people who are on the ground here and seeing a lot of local business activity. So we have two people that are right at the center of what's going on in Wichita business. Trish Brasted, President and CEO of the Wichita Technology Corporation, and Cindy Claycomb, Director of WSU Ventures and Assistant to the President for Strategic Planning at WSU. Please join me in welcoming Trish and Cindy to the panel. Scott, I know that one of the areas of focus for Bank of the West is small business lending. And it's somewhat surprising given all the very positive signs in the consumer economy that we haven't seen that same confidence reflected in small business. What are you seeing there in small business confidence? What's holding it back? What could change things?
Thanks, Lou. Well, it's true. The small business confidence really hasn't been in place in this expansion like we've seen in past economic recoveries. It's been very slow to improve. I'll tell you what our small business customers say to us. They're very concerned about rising regulation in their industries. They're concerned about uncertainty, economic uncertainty, financial uncertainty. We're in the lending business. We want to lend to small businesses. A lot of small businesses have pretty good cash flow, but they're not borrowing because they're so uncertain about the future. A lot of them were concerned about healthcare costs. So it's been a real slog to get small businesses to really participate fully in this economic expansion. I will say that we're seeing some signs of improvement here, and really it's tied to the strength of the U.S. consumer. A lot of small businesses really get a lot of their demand from the local retail sector, from the local housing markets, and those are sectors that have been really lagging because consumers were deleveraging. The housing market was coming out of its worst downturn ever. But we're at a point now in the recovery where some of those sectors are doing a lot better. So we do think that could help add to some of the momentum we're seeing on the U.S. side. I'll tell you from a business lending perspective, the banks are eager to lend into the space. Our bank has been increasing our loans by over double digits this year because we're really committed to this. We think the expansion is going to continue even with these headwinds from China, and it's really going to be consumer driven.
Trish, you are dealing with the other end of the pipeline, with people who are in the pretty early stages of business formation quite often. What are you seeing in the state and locally? What's the entrepreneurial climate?
Well, from a regional perspective, which is really how I kind of look at it, when I talk about the region, it's really about a 5-state area: Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Nebraska. And interest level is up, funding is up. The venture capital industry over the last 2 years, from a trend perspective, is up about 60% in financing. And that does trickle down and affect us in the Midwest and provide opportunity in the Midwest for entrepreneurs. So I think a lot of what you're seeing from the banking side and the tightness in the banking industry is being picked up by not only the angel investment community, but those in the venture side as well. And I expect that to continue. Another source in the whole venture economy that's providing a new opportunity is a whole new segment in what I call the venture ecosystem, and that's called crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is huge. Crowdfunding doesn't discriminate based on geography, so it doesn't really matter if we're in a flyover state. And it brings a whole new group of investors and their dollars to the venture economy that hasn't been there before. It's less than 5 years old, started out about $800 million. 2016, it was $16 billion was financed through crowdfunding, and it's estimated to be about $30 billion in 2015. So there's lots of activity and movement, and I think that's picking up what's needed in the market to help our entrepreneurs get access to capital and start and grow new businesses.
Cindy, you're dealing every day with inventors people who are making discoveries that might someday be businesses. And we've had a lot of emphasis on the WSU campus, especially the last 3 years, on innovation. What do you see coming out of that effort?
Well, there's a lot of buzz on campus now about innovation, and in almost every conversation, at least any substantive conversation, we talk a lot about innovation, and our strategic plan is built on that, aspiring to be an international model for applied learning and research, and being an educational, cultural, and economic driver for Kansas and the greater public good. So what we're seeing is that the buildings on the new innovation campus are of course of great importance, but that's not all that it's about. And it's not just about engineering, even though engineering is very important to this. I really think that this whole emphasis on innovation and what's happening has really changed our daily lives at Wichita State. And so if you look at one of our new projects, the Ideas Lab, which is being spearheaded by our College of Fine Arts, and it's bringing together, the idea behind that is to bring together artists and engineers and business majors and others for collisions on campus to create these technological innovations.
Let me follow that up with you and Trish. So these efforts, how do you see them translating into the regional economy? 5 years from now, will we be standing here, and will anything have been changed by these efforts?
Well, I absolutely hope so. I think what we've identified is a gap that I see is really from that idea generation and the support and the ecosystem that goes around those that are trying to start a business, getting through market validation, and then actually starting a business. And I would expect with the efforts of WSU and the Innovation Campus and all the things that they have going, and the infrastructure that we create along with the venture financing and the angel financing, we're going to see a pretty good uptick in startups. And I think it's going to be up to us and everyone in this community to get behind these efforts to make sure that that happens. Because I think the opportunity is there, and it's there for us to go and take advantage of.
And many of us heard James Chung last week when he was here, and he really talked about job growth and that comes from entrepreneurial ventures, and so a well-functioning entrepreneurial ecosystem is really important. And so some of the things that we're doing at the university that are part of the Innovation Campus, for instance, like more patent applications, small business innovation research grants, those kinds of things are really important. In April, we had over 150 people show up at a small business innovation research road tour, and this road tour had been to places like Atlanta and Oklahoma City and Louisville, and we had the largest group here in Wichita for that road tour, and I think that's really indicative of kind of that pent-up demand.
Okay, Scott, I want to ask you the monetary policy. Are people, you were talking about what the market is seeing versus what you're expecting in terms of rate increases. What's the effect of all this on small business formation and the overall economy? Is the Fed still effective in taking the punch bowl away or adding to it?
Well, we've really been on this new adventure for quite a while. We had QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, and then QE3. The Fed's balance sheet has gone from about $800 billion to $4 trillion. And now we still don't know if the Fed's been successful yet because they haven't unwound this amount of stimulus yet. So, they've been successful in regenerating growth, but how sustainable is that going to be as they try to normalize interest rates? I'd say there's a lot of market participants, a lot of big investors that are very skeptical at the Fed's ability to exit this stimulus without some significant adverse impacts. It's almost like you're taking these medications, and then the medications side effects are almost as bad as the disease. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, the Fed's been very careful to try to communicate this, right? I mean, I think they really have a tricky job in terms of communication here. In terms of forming market expectations. I can't remember a time where the market's view has been so different from the Fed's view, though. And Yellen just last Friday reiterated, hey, we're going to raise rates this year. And you had a lot of other Fed FOMC members saying, we're going to raise rates this year, yet the markets hardly blinked. And I think partly because who's been blinking over the last year has been the Fed, not the markets. And so, can the Fed be as effective? I don't think monetary policy is as effective as it used to be. But they don't have a lot of ammunition. I think the Fed is anxious to get rates back to normal because they're afraid that if we go into another global recession, they won't have any ability to lift the economy.
Trish, this is the last question we have time for, but will you talk to us a little about venture capital from your perspective, how available it is these days in the region, and what you see happening, particularly if the economy tightens up?
Sure, there's been a lot of discussion, and that was another one of the points of interest that came out of James Chung's diagnostic presentation was the lack of traditional venture capital, specifically in Wichita. The venture capital industry is expanding, and it's expanding larger than it has since 2000, and I think that's positive. I think that bodes well for our region because there is opportunity there. Wichita is a little different in that we don't have the traditional venture capital that some of the other cities have, but the dispersion of the uptick in venture capital is broader than it's been in 10 years as well. So I think that's, Terre Haute, Indiana, Bismarck, North Dakota, all those places that traditionally weren't seeing venture capital are getting it, which means there's opportunity for us to see it here. We can capitalize on and continue to benefit from our vibrant angel community, and I think our region, we're in the middle of a region where Kansas City, Omaha, Oklahoma City are expanding, and their entrepreneurial climate is as vibrant as it's been, and so
I want to stop you there, both because we're out of time, and I like stopping on that note. So, Scott, Trish, Cindy, thank you very much.
Thank you.